I'm honored to have this distinguished group here at the Age Institute to discuss in a serious and honest manner the impact of the Ukraine crisis for Asia as a whole. I have spent a lot of time trying to learn names of Ukrainians, Ukrainian history, all these things which I never learned before because I focus in basically China, Japan, and Korea. But it has made us aware of just how profoundly linked these different parts of the world are and how we can be affected by countries that we hadn't even heard of or heard of but had never known about before. So I think the most important thing for us is to understand, in some sense, the historical, even spiritual aspect by which great powers are seduced by their authority, how internal economic systems, administrative systems lead to bias and to the domination by small groups, and how this process creates these sort of catastrophes. And this catastrophe, as we all know all too well, is just starting. We don't really know how far it will go or what its greater ramifications will be. I have heard everything from people who suggest it's just a little power play between the United States and Russia and other powers, which they all had planned in advance and will lead, to some resolution once the negotiations are done, to those who see it as the launch of a world war that will leave millions and millions of people dead. And I have certainly seen, in terms of the brutality, the cruelty, the inhuman nature of the process unfolding now, the potential lying within this Ukraine situation for a truly dehumanized world. And that in terms of economics, how we pursue profit for the few, in terms of technology, military technology, and the technology of the everyday, how that affects us as humans, and other aspects, culture and civilization, right? How we respect our families, respect our community, and do not engage in barbaric acts against others. This has all broken down. And that is, I think, critical as a background to understand the current crisis, because the crisis is very quickly not just a crisis in Ukraine, but a crisis that covers the entire world. And today we have 5 distinguished experts to talk about the impact in Asia specifically. Very important, so we don't just get focused on, Berlin or Washington, D.C. or London, but Asia, what the implications are of the Ukraine crisis. So we're joined today. Let me just say a word about format. So I will ask each of the presenters to talk for about 10 minutes about what he thinks is the most critical aspects of the Ukraine crisis and its implications for Asia, and perhaps for his specific country or field of expertise. And then we'll go around one more time and get everybody's sort of response to the overall conversation, and then we'll open up the discussion for everybody. So we're joined by Professor Leonid Petrov of the International College of Management in Australia.
Professor Leonid has not come yet, so we can start with second professor.
It's fine. I'll introduce him, and then he will. It's not a problem. So we're joined by Professor Leonid Petrov of the International College of Management in Sydney, Australia, Dr. Pramod Jaswal, the Research Director of the Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement, Dr. Peter Beck, a professor at Yonsei University, Dr. Lakhvinder Singh, who's the director of the Peace Program here at our Age Institute, Mr. Ararat Konstantin, Research Fellow from the Institute of Oriental Studies, the National Academy of Sciences of Armenia, and myself as moderator, Emmanuel Pastreich, president of the Asia Institute. So it has been, so I think maybe we should just wait for a moment and
We can start with the second speaker.
okay.
Okay.
We'll start with the second speaker and then we can add him later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So you can edit this later. Okay.
Okay.
So let us start with some general comments on the implications for Asia and specifically for Nepal from Dr. Pramod Jaswal of the Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement. Dr. Pramod.
Thank you, Mr. Emmanuel. First of all, I must thank the Asia Institute for the kind invitation at this important discussions on the Ukraine crisis and its implications for Greater Asia. It is indeed a distinct privilege to speak with a distinguished panel of experts. Before I start, I would like to briefly introduce Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement. Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement is an independent, apolitical, and non-partisan think tank which believes in freedom, democracy, and world free from conflict. We envision a world where sources of insecurity are identified and understood, conflicts are prevented or resolved, and peace is advocated. NICE has 4 research centers: China Studies, Neighborhood Studies, Non-Terrestrial Security Studies, and Defense and Security Studies. And we also have 8 major research topics: global governance, sustainable development in smart cities, climate change and energy, disaster management, international economy and development, China's Belt and Road Initiative, Indo-Pacific affairs, refugee and migration, border and transboundary water politics. Journal of Security and International Studies is our flagship peer-reviewed journal. It also publishes newsletter, research paper, commentaries, monograph, and books regularly. In last 2 years, NICE has published more than 500 articles, hosted 1,500 scholars through more than 150 events. NICE has also hosted some of the prominent scholars like Noam Chomsky, Meir Scheimer, Stephen Wald, former Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Chief Minister of New Zealand, Sir Donald Charles McKinnon, State Minister of Education of Maldives, Dr. Abdullah Rashid Ahmed, Foreign Minister of Nepal, Mr. Pradeep Kumar Gyawali, and several others. Today, I'd like to focus my remark limiting what it means to South Asia and how we see Ukraine crisis from South Asian region. You are aware that Nepal voted in favor of UN resolution to deplore Russian invasion of Ukraine, while China and India, 2 of Nepal's big neighbor, abstained. It was surprising for many here as it could take a strong stand, unlike its strong neighbors. Nepal has taken a similar stand in support of Israel in 1959-1960, unlike 2 of its 2 big neighbors, India and China. While Nepal voted in favor, India abstained. India abstained because it wanted to maintain a balance between the Western Bloc, led by US, and Russia, since it has a strategic partner on both sides. It is not new because India has done that several times in the past. Russia is most trustable and traditional partner of India, where India has heavy reliance on Russia for its defense supplies. Right. India is aware that Russia is dependent on China at the moment to sustain the war, economically as well as politically. At the time where India has a border with China, Pakistan, that is isolated by the US, is looking for closer ties with Russia, would have hurt India's sensitivity. Similarly, India needs Russia at the UN Security Councils, as India do not have the veto power on the issue of Kashmir. They need Russia. Moreover, Ukraine has not supported India several times. For instance, Ukraine voted against India's concern on Kashmir issue. It has voted against India in 1998 during the India's nuclear test. Ukraine has supplied arms to Pakistan, that is rival to India in India, and it sees India, and it sees India's hand. It sees Pakistan's hand in cross-border terrorism. So India always sees Ukraine on the other side. Like India, China has also abstained. If you look at South Asia, we can see the geopolitical shift because small countries voted in favor and big abstained. In favor, there was Nepal, Bhutan, Maldives, and Afghanistan, and abstained were India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. Small, most vulnerable states in the region are most concerned about losing foreign policy autonomy due to great power competition. Crisis of Ukraine is a cause of the failure of great power diplomacy. That is how small states perceive to it. I think Ukraine crisis will have global impact. One, economy. First, the global economy is going to be affected. There is massive rise in gas and petrol price, which will have huge impact. Sanctions will not only impact Russia, but the whole world. Similarly, there are chances of yuan leading the dollar. Russia is likely to expand its trade with India and China. There will be disruptions in the supply chain causing global inflation, and it will also impact COVID recovery, post-COVID recovery. Second is China factor. The recent competition or rivalry between the US and China that was visible is going to take a pause. The new debate around the world is Russia and the US at the moment. Some believe that US would like to take China along with them, while China might also use this as an opportunity to resolve the differences, because probably the US is in current state can't afford to have two-wage war with both Russia and China. Third is the setback to democracy. There was some doubt that in this new equation might bring setback to democracy, rule of law, human rights, and the US might give up all those. Third is the war will also have impact on arms control. The Ukraine crisis will also impact arms control. The countries that are willing to give up nuclear weapons or not willing to produce them will not be convinced, looking at the Ukraine situation. Realism will become more prominent in the days to come. It is going to give signal that if you have nuclear weapon, you are safer, which will invite new arms race. There will also be polarization of global powers and the emergence of new Cold War. Russia-US rivalry might lead to a revival of new Cold War. There was some discussion of the revival of new Cold War between US and China, but this revival of new Cold War debate that has already emerged is now going back to US and Russia, not the China. China will be one factor in that. Right. Fourth is China is at the crossroad because of this crisis. China-US will impact the world order in days to come. How China-Russia ties and how China-US ties evolve will have huge impact on global politics. China is a major catalyst which can diffuse or even escalate tension at present. I also see the rise of RCI, Russia, China, India trilateral. Russia, China, and India alliance alliance is emerging if US goes for a strong sanction on Russia, because US pushing for a strong sanction on Russia will bring India and China closer to Russia for their economic interests. I see increasing greater power competition even in South Asia. There will be an increasing US presence in Nepal and the region in days to come. I think the only way the crisis will end is through dialogue. Diplomacy is the only way out.
Right.
I'd like to end here and address the question if there is. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent, excellent comments, Dr. Pramod, and I really appreciate your insights and particularly the objective perspective that you offer. So I'd like to ask Dr. Lakhvinder Singh for his perspective for India and also for Asia as a whole. He's also an expert on Korea. Dr. Singh.
Thank you, sir, for giving me this opportunity. I think even though on the surface, at this time, situation in Asia looks very calm and peaceful, but I think this Ukraine crisis is going to impact geopolitical environment in the region,
Yes.
especially in the Indo-Pacific, very strongly.
Right.
So we people who are living in Asia need to worry about, because two of the most important powers which are directly involved in the conflict are from Asia, China and Russia. So, but this time, when this world order was set up after the end of the World War, US was the most powerful country, and both China and Russia was very big. So that time they could not challenge USA, But now these two countries are very powerful and very ambitious. So it will be very, very difficult for USA to restore its dominance. Last time, the US dominance was based on its economic superiority as well as its military superiority, but
Right.
not anymore. Now the both US's economic superiority as well as military dominance has been challenged by China and
Right.
Russia. So Ukraine war in a way has challenged US dominance in the region, and it will be very, very difficult for the region to come back to pre-war situation. I
Right.
think we are shifting the pre-order region in the region pre World War II region order in the region is now shifting. It's very, very difficult to set up the stable political as well as economic system in the region, because now China and both Russia will not accept US dominance anymore. So this Ukraine war is going to affect our region very, very strongly. I think they are going to be, in a brief, they are going to be having 5 important applications which this region can have for the region. The most important will be the most important implication will be for China. I think China was being very active in the region, and China was trying to challenge US dominance before the war. But now, since the war has started and USA is engaged in the war, so USA may not be able to pay that much attention in the Indo-Pacific region. So we, who are the strong allies of USA, should be worried about increasing influence of China. So first implication will be China is going to be more and more aggressive and more claiming more and more territory in the region. So first consequences of this war, China's attitude towards the region is going to be more and more aggressive. I think the second most important point is about North Korea. You know, before the Ukraine crisis, North Korea was able to somehow deflect US pressure, and North Korea was able to keep its nuclear weapon despite the economic sanctions, despite all the threats coming from the USA. Somehow North Korea survived the pressure from USA and built a very strong and powerful economic nuclear system. But now with the Ukraine war, USA dominance in the region has been challenged. And as we all know that Ukraine was persuaded to give up its nuclear weapon under a nuclear treaty with the USA, UK, and Russia. But that treaty now has been challenged by Russia. So now, how can we persuade China? How can we persuade North Korea to give up its nuclear weapon through peaceful means? I think second most important application for the denuclearization of North Korea will be North Korea. So it will become more and more difficult for peaceful denuclearization of North Korea. So, and that is going to have a direct impact on South Korea's foreign policy, because the more South Korea, the more weapons in North Korea test, the more submarines, missiles in North Korea test, the more and more aggressive and more expansionist policy we can expect from new president of South Korea. So in the coming days, we can expect stronger and more pro-USA foreign policy from South Korea. So this heavy tilt towards USA is going to impact the region very, very strongly, because China is not going to take lightly, you know, even though China may not openly oppose the new foreign policy of South Korea, but China is not going to allow new modern weapons coming from USA and being deployed in South Korea. Last time when they tried to deploy the long-term THAAD in Korea, China has objected very strongly. But now, if South Korea is trying to bring more weapons to South Korea, it will be big tension. So a second impact which we can expect from this war is the high tension between South Korea and China, and that going to impact the whole security environment in the region. You know,
Right.
and third, I think a more important application will be regarding Japan. I don't think that if China become more aggressive, if China become more and more try to reach more and more in South China Sea, Japanese people are not going to take lightly, you know. So we can expect that Japan is going to respond in kind. So we can say, we can phrase that Japan may give up its peaceful constitution and start rearming itself. So we can expect that this nationalism or extreme nationalism in Japan is going to rise, and that can have a counter effect. As you know, nationalism in Japan is sometimes very dangerous for the regional country. So if the nationalism in Japan starts, it can have a counter effect, or in South Asia, even in Korea. So it can have side effect. So it can start a chain reaction in the region. So it can also start a kind of arm race. So this also is I'm very seriously worried about how Japan is going to react to China's aggressive behavior in the region, and how Japan is going to react to North Korea's aggressive behavior. No? Last time when they tested a nuclear missile, Japan was very upset with the new missile from South. So in the coming days, we can expect more and more tension between Japan and South Korea, and Japan and China, and that itself is going to create more instability and more chaos in the region. And last but not least, I personally expect that this alliance, Ukraine war, will bring China and Russia much closer. Earlier, before the war, there were some differences between China and Russia. But because of this new situation, I think both Russia and China are going to narrow down their differences and try to build a stronger response, united response against Japan, against South Korea, against US in the region. So now you can say division is complete. Battle lines are drawn. So on the one side, we can expect Japan, South Korea, and USA. Second time, we can see North Korea, China and Russia. Earlier, the alliance was blurred because of the economic growth, trade, all things were happening. But now, again, division will become stronger. So battle lines with North Korea, Russia, China on the one side, and USA, South Korea, and Japan on the one side. So they're very clear, sharp. So the peaceful diplomacy, is going to end, and the conflict between the two sides are going to increase so more and more. And this can bring a lot of economic instability, because Japan and China are very deeply involved in economic cooperation. So if this geopolitical situation forces them to conflict with each other, it can impact even the economic growth of the region. So it can have a very dangerous consequences. So, and I will talk a little bit about India. So far India was lucky. So India was able to maintain good relationship with the Western Bloc, as well as with the Russian Bloc, with Chinese Bloc. But I think as the superpower competition intensify in the region, India may not be that lucky. India may be forced to make a choice. So far, so good. But I feel in the coming days and the coming years, the superpower competition in the region are going to intensify more and more, and struggle is going to. So, better countries like India, who are trying to maintain a good relationship with both West as well as Russia and China, are in a very difficult position. So, we may not be able to maintain our neutrality, or we may not able to keep our what we call strategic ambiguity for a long time. Either we have to, because this superpower competition between Russia, China, and Western countries are not going to end anytime soon. It has a very deep reason. The fault lines are very deep. It cannot end with the end of the Ukraine war. So believe me, Ukraine war is just a manifestation of a bigger tensions which was happening in the region. So the Ukraine war is a manifestation of the struggle between two blocks. And country like India will be in very, very difficult situation. So if we decide to go with Russia, and Western country will be very aggressively react against India. And if we decided to go to Western country, China as well as Russia will react very angrily with us. So we in India will be very, very difficult situation. So I don't know at this stage what can I suggest to my policymakers what they should do. But I can foresee that we are heading towards a very difficult and very tricky situation. There's no easy end of this power struggle between two blocks, and we so far as we are trying to be equal, very active part in the Quad as well as the BRICS Association. But these two organizations are becoming very clear battle lines. So these fault lines are difficult to reconcile with the peaceful diplomacy. So the fault lines are very deep now, and fault lines are cutting across everything: economy, security, culture. It's not so India, country like India, who was trying to keep a smiling face with both countries. So it's a peaceful diplomacy or a dinner diplomacy or a friend personal relationship with Modi. Modi was able to maintain a good relationship with Putin as well as the President Biden. So that kind of personal relationship, which our Prime Minister tried to make, may be very difficult now in the future, because the fault lines are very difficult, very deep now. And it's India, so a country like India, which has been able to play double role, you can say a neutral role, are going to be in a very difficult situation. So as a whole, I want to conclude my remarks saying that we in Asia should take this war very seriously and should try to understand the real significance of this war. This war is a manifestation of two power blocks. Fault lines are very much deeper than it can be fully understood by normal observers. So we should start preparing. We should start preparing how to maintain peace, because if war happens in Asia Pacific, it will destroy everything. No country in the region, not just South Korea, not Japan or Australia or any other country can escape from the flames. So our main responsibility is how to reconcile two contending ideologies, contending economic models, and so that both China as well as Japan can live in peace. So even though our region is now at present is very peaceful, but in the coming days we can expect serious troubles. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you, Dr. Singh, for your thoughtful overview of geopolitical issues here in China, Japan, Korea, and India, of course. And I am struck, I mean, first by the absence of discussion really about arms control and disarmament anymore, and also the degree to which these blocks, I think you're very accurately described the blocks. But I think for those who like to say it's a new Cold War, the new Cold War was the sort of confrontation between ideological blocks, right? The socialist and the I guess you might say capitalist or free democratic groups block, and that was. But this is not really ideological so much. It's more like what we saw, in my opinion, before the First World War, say between Germany and Turkey, with England and France, and then extending, of course, to Russia. Of course, at the beginning of the confrontations leading to the First World War, no one imagined that Russia would end up aligned with England and France, but there are unpredictable aspects then and probably this time as well. So we'd like to ask next Professor Leonid Petrov from the International College of Management in Sydney, Australia, to give his perspective in 10-15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. Good evening, colleagues. Sorry, joined you later. Got confused with the time zones and line of day change. Greetings from Australia, from the Southern Hemisphere. I'm in Sydney today, but it's the picture of Canberra, the capital of Australia, and behind me. And I would like to suggest a kind of perspective from the Southern Hemisphere, which I believe potentially can make some sense of what is happening right now. I believe I don't have much time, but just perhaps I could share one or two slides, and if I cannot, that's perfectly fine, because it's pretty straightforward. Because I believe that what is happening between Russia and Ukraine right now, it has striking similarities to what happened on the Crimean Peninsula and the region and the world between 1950 and 1953. The war, the Korean War, as we know it now, happened at the start of the Cold War. And also the conflict between Russia and Ukraine also sort of signaled the beginning of a new Cold War, or restoration of the Cold War back in 2014. So what happened in Korea was essentially an attempt to unify the peninsula. Started as a war for unification back then in 1950. It also started started by Russia as a war for alleged unification of Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. In the year 2014, Russia annexed the Crimean Peninsula and also some parts of eastern provinces of Ukraine, and also expected Belarus to be absorbed by Russia as a part of the Union, the Russian, Belarusian, and Ukrainian Union at some stage. It did not happen for about 8 years until Russia decided to do it, resume the hostilities again, and attacked Ukraine in the same fashion as North Korea attacked South Korea. Right. So this war for unification very quickly, just almost instantly, turned into an international conflict, but not an open, not direct conflict, but the proxy conflict, where the United States very quickly formed the coalition of its allies, 15, 16 states back in 1950, but this time it's a much more loose coalition, which is not really led by NATO. We see that non-NATO states like Australia, for example, is providing very actively support to Ukraine and very aggressive in its rhetoric towards Russia, for a number of reasons. Australia has been living in constant fear of Russian aggression since the Crimean War, not the 2014, but since the Crimean War, 1852-56. And we see some ports in Australia have been built in anticipation of possible Russian invasion. So we see the whole, it's just very quickly growing just beyond the region of Eastern Europe. And the Korean War was also growing very quickly across East Asia, potentially involving the Soviet Union, which was using its proxy forces, its air force in the Korean War. But also Ukraine is benefiting from both NATO and non-NATO states in Eastern Europe. So my question is, will this conflict turn into the World War III? Because at the moment, I believe it is already the surrogate World War III, like the Korean War used to be between 1950 and 1953. And the only thing which stopped the Korean War and World War III was the death of the tyrant, death of Joseph Stalin in March 1953. Actually removed any for North Korea and China to continue that war, and also send a strong signal to the UN command that Russia was not going to actively continue its support of North Korea after Khrushchev and Malenkov regime stepped in the Kremlin and executed Beria and other staunch supporters of Joseph Stalin. So I believe that the conflict between Russia and Ukraine is also going to end as soon as Vladimir Putin is either dead or incapacitated. And looking at his current state of health and his mental state, I don't think it is going to take very long. But many things may happen between now and the moment when Vladimir Putin stepping down from his current role of the strongman of Russia, and also the potential unifier and dictator of the and the person who might resurrect and restore the Soviet Union in its pre-1989 borders. 1991 Soviet Union collapsed, but Vladimir Putin is very ambitious in restoring Moscow's influence over the territories beyond the Soviet Union, like the Warsaw Pact countries, Eastern European countries. Well, in that case, if we look broader, I feel like across Asia, we will see that there are many, like a domino effect may actually happen if Russia prevails in that war against Ukraine and happens to either militarily and politically destroy Ukraine, then it is potentially may result in this domino effect of regime changes in not only former Soviet republics like Central Asian republics like Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, those who are currently going very quickly into the orbit of influence of China, but also the Eastern European regimes as well. If Russia starts taking one by one the non-NATO states like Moldova, or potentially might go further into the even NATO states or prospective NATO states like Finland and who knows, maybe Poland. That's what Russian propaganda is claiming and promising right now. So and also, just before I finish, I would like to refer to certain issues, like contentious issues of which have been raised and remembered from the even before the war in Ukraine started. We saw that Volodymyr Zelensky, president of Ukraine, raised the issue of nuclearization of Ukraine in his speech in Munich, end of was it last year or early this year? Somebody can remind me, but it was just weeks before the war started, which we believe it was doomed, it was bound to start, and that's what Moscow used as an excuse in the first stage of that invasion. That apparently denuclearization of Ukraine was supposed to be one of the reasons. So nuclear proliferation is one of the issues which this conflict reminded of. So Ukraine gave up its nuclear arsenal to Russia. Ukraine was given security assurance by back in 1994 by several European states, and that promise was abrogated. So also Ukraine potentially has the capacity of ICBM missile production and tests. And we know that there were allegations that Ukraine actually was sharing its technology with North Korea. And Russian Defense Minister Shoigu visited both China and North Korea months before this conflict, talking about intercontinental ballistic missile technologies to both leaders in Beijing and Pyongyang. And of course, the possibility of usage of other weapons of mass destruction, like chemical weapons, biological weapons, which Russia has a substantial stockpile of, although they're illegal, but they are all, I believe we can have all reasons to doubt that Russia destroyed them as a result of international agreements, and Russia potentially may use it, or at least Russia may use the false flag operation and accuse Ukraine of using the stockpile of chemical or biological weapons. So this all creates so many concerns, which are not only local for Eastern Europe, but also for broader Asia. We know the conflict between India and Pakistan, between India and China, between China and People's Republic of China and the Republic of China in Taiwan. conflict between North and South Korea, and of course conflict between China and Japan. So it antagonizes the whole region. It gives some hints at what may or may not happen in terms of economic sanctions, but also the Cold War dynamics and hot war possibilities, which and I believe that the world is now is very close to World War III, probably as close as it used to be back in the early 50s, when Korea was in the grip of war, initially domestic, the local, the civil one, which turned into international one, and very, very nearly or marginally missed the moment when it could turn into World War III. We were lucky back then. Will we be lucky this time again? I don't know. I would like to hope so. But again, frankly speaking, I believe that this war can just finish with one shot, and with one man simply stepping down or giving up on that war, either voluntarily or forcibly, because this war does not make any sense, except for one man in the Kremlin. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that very thoughtful discussion, especially about the background within Russia. And I'm curious. I just asked a very short. I have had discussions, various people in, whether in Seoul or in Washington D.C., on this question of Vladimir Putin, and there seems to be a little bit of a split between those who say that Vladimir Putin and his particular personality, if he retires or he's out, there'll be a fundamental change, and those who think that there are some systemic cultural aspects to the Russia today, that even someone replacing Vladimir Putin would follow many of the same directions. What are your feelings?
It's a very good question, and I certainly believe that there was no reason for that war until President Putin decided to antagonize the whole population of Russia, all stratas, like from grassroots population to rank and file military and the elites and oligarchs and everyone, just to inculcate them with the idea that Ukraine is a failed state. It's something what Adolf Hitler used to treat Poland like, the ugly result of the Versailles agreement, something what does not deserve to exist, and something which must be partitioned as soon as possible. So then Vladimir Putin also has this opinion about Poland as much as about Ukraine. So, but Poland is part of NATO, and Ukraine is not, and that's what made Ukraine look like an easy target for many observers, and the military, Russian military, was very keen to create or support the myth of Ukraine as being a failed state, and a mistaken aberration of international relations process, something which does not deserve to remain independent. And obviously it was miscalculation. But Vladimir Putin surrounded himself with psychopaths and people who simply don't dare to tell him the truth. And perhaps he still is convinced that Ukraine is going to either surrender or fall an easy prey for the Russian military. And no one at the moment is actually prepared to tell the bad news to President Putin that the Russian army is actually sustaining massive loss of manpower and equipment, and this war is going not only undermine the economy of Ukraine, but also undermine the future of Russia. And I believe that the Russian Federation in its current state is not going to survive this collision, not just with Ukraine, but with the rest of the world. Maybe not yet with China or India, but I believe that China and India are very quickly realizing that Russia is a coloss on clay feet, both militarily, politically, economically, and it's not going to sustain this impact with the largest European state, Ukraine. It's the largest European state, and with 44 million people. If it's supported by with money and weapons, Russia is going to sustain of military and political impact, and not only Putin's regime, but also Russia in its current borders is not going to survive very long. And I believe that it would lead to disintegration of Russia as we know it is right now.
Thank you. So let us ask the last and most important, Dr. Kostanian from the National Academy of Sciences of Armenia for his perspective, especially from the perspective of Armenia, which is really at the center of this geopolitical tension and transformation. Please.
Thank you. I'm honored to be part of this discussion, and I would like to thank Asia Institute for inviting me. Well, previously my colleagues have spoken on Asia. Mr. Petrov, he gave an historical aspect on European issues. I would like more to take a look at geopolitical issues and go a little bit back and see how this crisis has started, because I believe that this crisis is not only a European crisis per se, it's not only Asian crisis, but we have the other parts of the world which wars continuously are going and going. For example, South Caucasus, Middle East. Right. But in general, I can link this crisis to two main issues if we look at it from the geopolitical aspect. First, from 2008, the financial crisis, the fall of, the unipolar hegemonic power of the US. From the other side, we see the rising powers such as Russia militarily, China economically, India is on the way. So I believe that the world order has shifted, especially, as I mentioned, from the financial crisis and later on during the Syrian war, when we have seen in United Nations, the situation hasn't been comparing with the Iraq invasion. We have seen Russia and China raising and putting veto against NATO involvement in Syria. So from that time, as a follower, as an expert of Middle East, I started to realize as an expert that there is shift in global order. There is no more unilateral world, and I have written articles on this issue that time. So, and the rise of nationalism started, not in a negative way, but if we consider, Mr. Emmanuel, you have raised that issue that there is no ideology. I believe somehow there is, not in terms of economy. I mean, still we don't see any other economic system rather than capitalist system, but ideologically we are seeing both Russia, China, and India somehow, they do have in their policy, philosophical, political policy, nationalism is existing. For example, Russia is, showing this in Tsarist Russia era, like they want to bring it back, that nostalgia with putting forward the orthodoxy issue, the church issue, or the uniting all Orthodox church together. China, they have, although it is a socialist system, they do have in their base Confucianism. When they say socialism with Chinese characteristics, that means nationalism in brackets. And India is having the same. Indian nationalism is rising. I'm not criticizing, I'm just trying to show that the other side was already coming to challenge the unilateral one system, globalized liberalist system in the world. But coming to the conflict now, precisely, after the Warsaw Pact, there was an agreement between the US and that time Soviet leaders, although not written, that NATO expansion will not reach to Eastern Europe. So that didn't follow. We saw some Eastern European countries are being part of NATO. And after several times, after several meetings, even the last meeting between the high-level Russian and US foreign ministers, it was Russians put it very clearly that we cannot accept any country or any regime that allows NATO to come to our border.
Right.
I mean, this is a red line for Russians, and in a way, if we are talking on a real politic perspective, that is agreeable or understandable, if you want better words, understandable, because I can compare that with the Cuban Missile Crisis. I mean, Americans didn't let that to happen in their borders. So why should Russians let that happen in their borders? And after several times, why Russia did this act, I believe that this is invasion. I don't call it this operation. It is invasion. But what brought the Russians decide to act such a way militarily? I believe this is not Ukraine's fault. I believe this is the United States and their allies' fault in forcing small countries to be kind of a buffer zone or used against other big powers in their competition. Right. For example, in Middle East, I will give you an example, Lebanon. You know, it's being forced by, from one side, Iran and allies, from other side, US, Israel and their allies. I mean, I personally, I don't agree that this kind of in this kind of situation, countries to be used in between both superpowers, and at the end the country is ruined. You know, it's in war, and who's responsible for this? I believe, what about Ukraine? The best solution could have been if Ukraine stayed neutral in this conflict between NATO or Europe or Russia or US Russia, and they if they could use positively both ways for their country, for their development. I'll give you an example also from Asia. Malaysia, they have a good relation with China, they have good relation with Russia, with the US. I mean, Malaysia now playing somehow in between, and they gaining whatever they positive to their country. Regarding this crisis in general, I believe the economic crisis will not impact Asia much, but the security issue here is very big problem, as mentioned. And I will add also something that not between the countries. I mean, my colleague mentioned that a security issue between Japan, Korea, China, that is worrying Taiwan. But I would say also jihadist Islamic groups may use this chance to start more activities, because we know that those groups, when there is no security, these groups will start to be more active, and they will start to infiltrate and perform terrorist acts, such as that could be Jamia Islamiyah in Indonesia, that could be in Kashmir, some jihadist groups financed by some Al-Qaeda, or some of them even are running, getting support from Turkey. So these terroristic groups also might be, if this war gets for longer period, they will lose the chance. They will lose the chance, and they will create more tensions by, I don't know, terroristic acts, bombing shopping malls, and you know, we have seen this kind of incidents before. And even in the territory of China, the Uyghur issue can be raised. And so I believe that in one way, demilitarization is a good sign for peaceful coexistence. But at the same time, if situation is like this and wars will be prolonged like this, and we don't know if this war stops, we don't have any guarantee that Taiwan will not do such tension and start create an atmosphere that China could attack and ask for reunite Taiwan to China. So that is still not clear, but it's under tension. My conclusion will be, sorry, what about in Asia? Because our topic is mainly on Asia. Asian also shifted their stance when we are seeing which countries are supporting US on sanctions against Russia. We have seen Japan, South Korea, Singapore, Indonesia also, they declared that the war should stop, but they didn't put sanctions on Russia. Malaysia, same, and Vietnam also, where they are American #1 airline, maybe in Southeast Asia, but at the same time they have strong military purchase cooperation with Russia. So does Indonesia, and Myanmar, of course, supporting Russia on this. So I believe there is also shift. I mean, the US and their allies, they didn't. Yes. Hello.
Someone's talking. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Finish.
I've heard some noise. Yeah. So even although this conflict is not related with Asia, but we have seen there is a shift in their policy towards US as never been before. So the support didn't come. Either they are non-aligned or they didn't use such spicy words toward Russia, and they didn't support eagerly the US, to my surprise, because we know that the biggest in Asia in terms of geopolitical influence, it's either US or China. But it seems Russia is coming to play a role in Asia as well in terms of military purchases. India, of course, my last. India, of course, is playing very pivotal role, and I'm personally admired of the foreign policy India is showing to the world, because they have good relations not only with US and Russia, but what is different here, that they are trying to show that they are not neutral, but they are gonna be the pillar of the multipolar world. And that is very important aspect, because that could create balance of power. I mean, if to these poles today, we are in bipolar world, India, if is able to unite the countries in Asia under one umbrella and call it non-aligned camp, that could create a multipolar world, in my idea. And as I said, it could create a balance of power. But what makes me worried that we are talking about great powers and their wars in the regions, but I call it this a big chaos, you know, like we are human beings, regardless of our ideologies, regardless of our intentions, regardless of our goals in politics or in geopolitics. But imagine the human beings today, after having all these coronavirus restrictions, deaths, sickness, and now more wars. I believe that this world system has to be somehow changed. United Nations must have more tools to impose on great powers to stop and return to diplomacy. I mean, when we are looking to all this, what happened during the pandemic and later the wars, we have seen that diplomacy doesn't exist, you know? Like these people haven't studied diplomacy or haven't performed. I'm seeing everybody like a military general, you know, all of them. So I believe that diplomacy might come on a table, and I believe that Ukraine and Russia could have been solved this question all these years with the diplomacy. They both had the chance to solve it with diplomacy. One side was blaming the US for interfering, and I agree they were interfering in Ukraine's policies in the region, I mean, regionally. And the other side is blaming Russia for imperial ambitions. I mean, Russia and Ukraine could have been sat together and solved this problem together instead of turning Europe into big, into conflict between NATO and Russia or NATO and US. Coming to my region, of course, this situation is very worrisome for us as Armenia and in South Caucasus regarding Georgia and Azerbaijan. At the moment, we have tensions on the border because Azerbaijan has used the chance that Russia is involved in Europe in a war, and it, as we can see, it will prolong because Russian calculations didn't come to be right in terms of the regime change so quick and that, etc. And Azerbaijan used the chance to start the war on the border again. Coming to the Middle East, it will impact as well because Israeli-Palestine tensions started just yesterday. There was killings on Tel Aviv streets. Few days ago, Israel attacked some locations on Syria. So I believe everybody is using the chance to hurt the opponent in some way, but not economically or in other means. Just everybody is using weapons. So that is why I believe that the first issue today is security issue, and all of them jointly must come on table and solve these problems.
Can I ask, you didn't mention Turkey in your discussion so far. What
I did, but on China issue, yeah. I mean,
Turkey
yes,
is a player in its own right, or it thinks that it's a player in its own right. So I'm curious what
he's trying, but we hope not. So yeah, Turkey. What Turkey is doing today? Turkey is harboring terrorism, jihadists around the world. That's his job today. Like he has his army, you know, collecting from everywhere, from Libya, from I don't know, Afghanistan, Syria, and he's using soft power as well. He's even spreading, interestingly, in Kashmir, they have very big influence, spreading the pan-Turanic ideology, like spreading short movies, like on CDs, etc. Like he's doing the soft power as well. But at the same time, Turkey, in our last war in Nagorno-Karabakh between Armenia and Azerbaijan and Artsakh Republic, Turkey harbored jihadists from Syria, the territory that it's under control, and brought them in the war involved against us. So this is crazy, you know, like how come these Islamist jihadists get involved in a war that it's not their war? But they are trying to put the pretext that this is a war between Christians and Muslims, which is in fact, it's not. I mean, Syrians, Armenians, they have very good, who are in Syria, they have very good relations with Muslims. I mean, the real Syrians, there is no intention, religiously intention war. It's about territory that belonged to us. During Soviet Union, Stalin gave to Azerbaijan. As you know, this tension also exists in between Ukraine and Russia, and I think all over these Soviet post-Soviet countries have this problem. But coming to the present, you know, as Mr. Petrov mentioned about Russia's ambitions of creating some Russian Union. In fact, they are not. The Russian side is not hiding this. They have mentioned several times, and Alexander Dugin also talked about this, that they will create Eurasia. But if it comes to Armenia at the moment, we want it or not. But the current situation of Armenia now, landlocked between Turkey and Azerbaijan, two enemy countries. We are a small country in between, and they are every day rhetorically showing signs that they will attack and take the southern part of Armenia to link Turkey to Azerbaijan and later Central Asia and create this pan-Turkic empire. That is their ambition. But in fact, we don't have other ally in the region except Russia. So in this conflict, I mean, Although we also have good relations with Ukraine. I mean, I have many Ukrainian friends. That's
Right.
not the issue. But in Karabakh war, Ukraine sided, not the people, the government. They sided with Azerbaijan. So now we don't have in this conflict very much to maneuver. So we are hoping that this war ends. I hope that not many people die. This is my desire, and I hope the war stops, that we can bring our security here, because if Russia is our ally and they have the Russian base here, which secures us from Turkey border.
Right.
So if tensions escalates and if Russia gets more busy with other wars, we might get really in trouble here, you know?
Right.
So this is about South Caucasus.
Right, understood. Well, thank you very much. So for our last speaker, Dr. Dongchun Shin, President of the Global Space Aviation Society, with the Korean perspective of the impact of the Ukraine crisis.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much for your thoughtful insights on Ukrainian crisis. I'm just a Korean citizen who is very much interested in the unification of Korean Peninsula. So from that perspective, I would like to make some few comments. First of all, Russian invasion of Ukraine has not been going well.
Right.
Contrary to expectation. They committed a war crime, they committed a genocide, killing hundreds of thousands of innocent civilian Ukrainian people. So it gave a shock and alarm to the rest of the world. So I think the war is going to into another character, which is mostly condemned by most citizens in the world toward against the Russian leader Putin. So their position will be deteriorated as time goes by. So as you are well aware, NATO and neighboring countries, and especially United States, is supplying unlimited arms to Ukraine, which we predicted the war will be prolonged for a certain period of time. Anyway, Ukrainian will be devastated, but Russia also will be weakened by the sanctions from US and Western European countries against economic sanctions against Russia. And it turned out that the Russian army and Russian force is not strong as expected. The Ukrainian army is fighting against the Russian forces very well, very well. Mm-hmm. And Russia is repeating the old behavior. I mean, the killing innocent civilian people and resulting to total destruction of cities and people, as they did in Second World War, Syria, Chechnya, and Afghanistan. So it was well proven. So I think it is very doubtful UN functions, about UN functions. As Russia is a permanent member of United Nations Security Council, when Russia invade other countries, there is no option for UN to take. So very sorrowful and disappointing in international stage. And Russia is also seeking assistance from China. China is a very difficult position. So because Western sanctions against Russia, China will be absolutely influenced by that kind of international sanctions. Anyway, my main interest is about Korea and Japan regarding China's aggression and North Korea's, developing nuclear power. So these days, as new Korean government is going toward pro-United States, pro-Japan, the situation will be quite different. So there are some people who would like to raise the possibility of sharing nuclear arms with United States directly, as in the case in NATO. And some say even we Korean people have to develop nuclear weapons on our own, because United States in certain period of time is very unstable in supporting, full supporting South Korea in case of war. And I think Japan will do their utmost effort to rearm their defensive military personnel, because in opposing Russian forces, especially their negotiation with Russia regarding the returning of 4 northern islands of the Japanese coast. And our another interest is that how is China is going to attack Taiwan, then it's very difficult situation. It means nearly Third World War. So we don't know, we cannot predict the Chinese behavior, but anyway, we, South Korea, United States, Japan, Australia, and many Asian countries will be united in opposing China and North Korea and Russia, which is also have characteristics of totalitarian, authoritarian dictatorship. So thank you. This is my comment.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shin. I much appreciate your perspective, especially the Korean perspective, and bringing, of course, the Japanese situation into focus as well. So with the time remaining, I think we'll just ask each of the presenters to make a brief comment on whatever topic has come up in the course of our discussion, and maybe limit it to, say, around 5 minutes if possible. So starting with Professor Petrov, your say a 5-minute comment about our discussion and what you think are the critical takeaways.
Right, thank you, Emmanuel. Yeah, I'm very pleased to listen to the 2 presentations only. So I apologize for missing more, but it was very interesting to look or to listen to Dr. Konstanyan's insights, and also Dr. Shin's views. So with Ararat, I would like to ask perhaps, or maybe first a comment, but maybe you can add some insights into that topic, that actually Ukraine has the war in Ukraine, Russian war in Ukraine is going so badly that Moscow needed to withdraw certain troops from the hotspots or potential hotspots or conflict zones, like Nagorno-Karabakh, Artsakh, right? So now they're taking the, or at least plan to take the peacekeepers, because I don't know what happened first, whether the peacekeepers are taken from the region and then Azerbaijan is going to step in and completely annihilate any name or title of Artsakh. Russia is also taking certain troops, I think it's the 211th division from Tajikistan, the border with Afghanistan, again, in order to take these troops to Ukraine. Russia is now scrambling the troops from Transnistria Republic, the eastern enclave, eastern province of Moldova, again to bring them into the theater of Ukrainian war. So initially it was expected that Russian troops would occupy Ukraine first and then help Transnistria to take the rest of Moldova. But now it's going the other way around because Russia is doing so badly militarily. It looks like it just changes the landscape or military theater, not only in Eastern Europe, but everywhere else. Who knows? Maybe some Russian troops will be taken away from, I don't know, the polar circle and even from Kamchatka and be taken from the Sea of Okhotsk, and who knows from where, and will be moved to the Black Sea. But I don't know. Turkey very effectively blocked the Bosphorus Strait and prevented the US and Russian naval assets from going into the Black Sea. So we can see the changes in international political, diplomatic, military, and economic landscape, complete changes just in a matter of 5 weeks. So
Right.
if both, say, Dr. Singh and Dr. Konstanyan could either correct me and tell me that, no, it's just a temporary phenomenon, and all these troops are going to return, and North Korea is also going to be supported by Russia as soon as the war in Ukraine is over, in whoever might win that war, or maybe the peace agreement might be reached, and the Russian troops will return to where they're supposed to be, including the Russo or Sino-Russian border, which traditionally during the Cold War, during the whole period was a potential flashpoint where everyone. I grew up in the Soviet Union, and I remember how all Soviet citizens were afraid of war with China, particularly in 1970s and during the 80s as well. So the Russian troops who have been moved, and you saw that letter V entering Ukraine, and V in Russian means east. So eastern contingent of troops been removed from the Sino-Russian border, taken to Ukraine. So what is rest of them might return now to China, or maybe not. Who knows? And frankly speaking, I believe that it will end badly for Russia itself, and Russia is going to dismember. The Russian territory is going to break out into the Far Eastern Republic, the Siberian Republic, the Urals Republic, so and potentially many more provinces. Leaving Moscow is just without any natural resources and money and influence. And ultimately, we will see Kremlin just staying in total isolation, surrounded by Russian-speaking independent states like Ukraine, like Belarus, but they have some strong cultural agenda. But perhaps we might see, independent Artsakh and independent parts of Moldova, or parts of Central Asian republics, which we haven't seen yet. I don't know, Kokand and Bukhara republics. Who knows? So that's my comment and question.
I'll reply. The last information we had on the ground on Nagorno-Karabakh, that the Azeris intervened, the Azeris approached to a village, and they took a village from Artsakh area, but the Russian peacekeepers and the Armenian Artsakh troops there retreated them back. Currently, we don't have any worrying problem in Artsakh regarding the Russian peacekeepers. But in my presentation, as I said, if the war prolongs, I mean, real war, this is also real war, but I mean, if it gets more serious war, and it is very clear, it is very logic that Russia might also not even in this region, but might call back its troops from Middle East, maybe. We don't know. I don't have any clear information. I'm just predicting. If this war prolongs, we don't know if this war could be escalated on Russian soil. You know, I'm not fantasizing, but we are people of mind. We have the right to think. So that's why in our national interest to this conflict to end and diplomacy come and Ukraine and Russia, they sort their problems together. That is the best option actually for Russia and Ukraine as well, for the whole region as well. We are civilized people, and this 21st century we have to solve our problems by talking, by negotiating. What about Turkey? Yes, Turkey is playing, Turkey is famous for its diplomatic maneuvers that comes from Greeks before the Ottoman Empire, that culture of doing diplomacy, I meant. Yes, the Bosphor area, they both closed for both sides, but at the same time, Turkey sold a lot of Turkish-made drones by Bayraktars to Ukraine, and this angered Russia so much. And I remember the first days of the war started, they bombed a semi-factory in Ukraine area that they were generating these drones, Bayraktar, made in Ukraine and jointly with Turkey, if I'm not mistaken. And Turkey speaks often of territorial integrity and etc. But Turkey doesn't have, sorry to use this word, doesn't have the balls to go and sanction against, against Russia. So Turkey, actually, what Turkey wants in that region, Turkey wants to control Black Sea. Turkey wants Crimea. Turkey doesn't want Crimea to be either in Russia or in Ukraine. Turkey wants Crimea to be in the Turkish territory because they have the Tatar Turks there historically. They consider Crimea belongs to Turkey. So their ambition, I think, they are playing both ways, and they will be happy if both Russia and Ukraine become weaker, so they could control the Black Sea that goes all the way to Mediterranean Sea. This is their ambition in the region.
Do you think that Turkey now has a sort of an imperial ambition to establish itself like that?
Yes, of course. They have the pan-Turkic ideology, that imperial plan, strategy, if you want. That it's not that I'm Armenian and I'm telling this. I mean, a few months ago, I remember the Nationalist Party leader, which is allied with Erdogan's party in the parliament. He dedicated him a big map of Turkey that they desire to be, and even Siberia was inside that map. Xinjiang was inside that map. Armenia totally. Some part of Central Asia, Crimea, northern Aleppo, which their army is situated there now. I mean, they have this ambition, and if you follow the Russian televisions, you will see this kind of in this kind of discussions and TV programs, that map will be shown often on screen. So they are doing this propaganda, and they believe in it. I mean, as the Russia wants to create its empire, Turkey wants to create its empire. China has already its empire, and we'll see when Korea will create jointly their own empire. The unification of Korea, when will happen, I cannot say.
I'm really sorry to ask another question, but I will take my prerogative because I'm so interested. So when you see Turkey, say in this sort of fluid state that results from the Ukraine crisis, say Turkey sort of maneuvering for increasing its power and maybe dreaming of some sort of new Ottoman Empire, and then you take Iran. Do you see that Iran and Turkey would be sort of coming together as allies, or do you think that there's some fundamental differences that would make them rival empires in the area?
They won't become ally as long as for two issues. First is the Shia-Sunni split.
Right.
Second is the nationalism that I have spoken in my presentation. Iran also, although it is an Islamic government, but it's not hidden, but it exists the Iranian nationalism as well. I mean, it's they are kind of Islamic nationalist country. On the side, you have the Sunni Sunni Turkic nationalism. So I think in Islamic world, these two powers are the main adversaries in our region. And we have good relations with Iran, although we are a Christian country, but out of these circumstances, we always have been in good relations with Iran. I mean, we are in good relations with other Arab Sunni countries as well. But here in 90s, when this blockade started by Turkey, Iran was the only country that opened the borders for Armenia. Can you imagine? We had only one passage, southern Armenia, that we could, import and export. They could have said that, this is a religious war between Christians and our other neighbor, Azerbaijan, and we will shut the border, but they didn't.
Right. Thank you. So, Dr. Pramod, your sort of final comments on today's discussion.
Thank you so much. I really don't have much to add, but one thing that I wanted to mention that the new Cold War that will emerge at the moment, or will be very different from Soviet era Cold War. While Soviet era Cold War was ideological in nature, I think the new Cold War will be based on the economic interest and control of resources, like the region, like Indo-Pacific and the resources, all those. One thing that I want to reiterate is that long before the Ukraine conflict, it was being discussed how Russia will shape Indo-Pacific strategy. If there is strong sanctions on Russia, I think it will impact the economy, and India and many small countries would like to benefit from cheaper energy, which Russia would like to offer. So I think in that shape, if that is going to be strong in that sense, I think there'll be emergence of a strong Russia, India, China trilateral. That's why I think it'll be interesting to see how these things are evolving in days to come, because while many of the countries, the major powers, their interests overlap with Russia, but ideologically or in terms of other factors that goes with United States or the Western bloc. So I think it will be interesting to observe all these changes in days to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your thoughts on this, your perspective. So in closing, Dr. Singh, if you would make some closing comments about our discussion and about today's seminar on the Ukraine crisis and its impact for Asia. I cannot hear.
Okay, before I ask you one question, there's one, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
There's one student from India. He wants to ask you one question. Okay, can he ask you one question?
Please.
Now you can ask now.
Yeah, thank you. Could you hear me now? Is it
Yes.
audible? Yeah, okay. So, first, there are two questions now. I want to ask, if Russia occupies Ukraine, then what would be the further steps of Russia? And then the second question is, what would be the impact for India of the Ukraine crisis? Because India has been viewed as a partner of Russia by Western countries and European countries, and warned of several actions by many countries. And recently, many countries' foreign ministers have visited India. Yeah.
So who would like to answer? Or
the first question, I'm just trying to recall. So what will happen if Russia occupies what?
Yeah, Russia occupies Ukraine, and then the further steps of Russia.
Well, Russia is already occupying the Crimean Peninsula since 2014, and several regions of Ukrainian Donbas area. Now, since the war started, Russia has taken more of land mass in the east and south, but it destroyed many industrial hubs, which means that it began, which still populated with civilians and still peppered with pockets of resistance, Ukrainian military, certain militant groups, and it looks like Russia is now focusing more. Now, recently, Russia withdrew troops from the north in order to concentrate and amass more military in the south and east, which makes more sense for Russia to surround or link the Crimean Peninsula, which is essentially became the South Korea of Ukraine, right, as an island, the Crimean Peninsula. So Russia needs the land route to the Crimean Peninsula to provide it with water and automobile and railway connections. So, well, I believe that if Russia can secure that land route to Crimea, that would be already the big victory for Putin. And to expect anything else is going to be probably more of an ambitious plan. So that's probably the minimal agenda which Putin has, at least before the 9th of May. And the 9th of May in Russia is the national celebration of the victory. So I think that's what Putin is trying to achieve. And if he doesn't achieve that, then it's going to be a massive reputational loss for Putin and the military. I know there's already reprisals against certain generals in the army and FSB, the political police. But if Russia manages to secure that land route to Crimea, there's going to be big celebration in Moscow on the 9th of May, and perhaps the war can end there, unless something else happens. And I don't believe Russia is going to take any more land, with the exception if Russia start taking using weapons of mass destruction, and then with the huge loss of human life, they will have this no man land, and then Russia might occupy it, but that's probably going to be uninhabited. It's something like General MacArthur was trying to create a cobalt belt between North Korea and China to secure like that no troops, no supply is going to be brought from China to North Korea. It did not happen, thanks God. And I hope that Putin will not use any weapons of mass destruction to create any catastrophe for Ukraine and for Europe.
All right. Thank you. Dr. Singh.
Okay, thank you. I would like to start with my my comments with the so far so good. So far, the flames of war have not reached Asia, but this may not last long. So I'm very seriously worried about how the war going to impact Asia Pacific region. So as you already know, it has already taken first casualty. The government in Pakistan has collapsed. Why? Because army was not happy with the Prime Minister's foreign policy towards the Ukraine war. He went to Russia to meet Putin the day he attacked Ukraine. But army didn't like it, because army has very close relationship with USA. So, this kind of a situation can happen in any country. So division can come within the ruling elite in India, in Pakistan, in other countries. What should we do? Whether we should go with Pakistan, whether we should go with Russia, whether we should go with the best country. So what happened in Pakistan today or yesterday can happen in almost every country, because this issue, what should we do and what should not we do, is very critical and not easy answer. So government in Pakistan has collapsed because army was not happy with the policy response from the Imran Khan government. So this kind of, so we can look for serious instability in the region, because even India, so far we are lucky. So far we are lucky that we have managed to keep both sides happy. So a lot of prime ministers, a lot of foreign ministers are visiting India and trying to win over India to their side. So Indian foreign minister, Indian prime minister is happy that they are getting attention. But I seriously doubt that this policy of double friendship can work for long. So we have to we're heading towards a very serious situation when we have to ultimately take a decision. We have to make a call. What should we do? So again, like what happened in Pakistan can happen in India, because this is not a very serious question. This is a very serious question. What should we do? Because many countries, India has a very strong relationship with the USA, with the West European country, because we are democracy, we have fundamental values. But there's simply no way we can dump Russia. So as the war intensify, as the war prolong, and more countries, USA and European countries try to push hard to make a call, and Mr. Putin start making more push to make a call, we will be in very, very difficult situation. So I'm very, very seriously worried about my country. Same is with the case of Korea. As South Korea is have new president of South Korea have decided to align with the USA, with the President Biden. So, but it's not easy choice. It's not easy choice. Once new president take over and they start affecting some policy changes in the foreign policy, then you will see China will react very angrily. And it is not easy for South Korea to face Chinese pressure. So again, I feel same kind of political division can come in South Korea also. So South Korean lead can also be divided. What should we do? Should we go full throttle with USA, or should we have a strategic ambiguity towards China? Again, so same situation can happen in South Korea also. So like India, we will be in, like India, South Korea will be very, very difficult situation in coming years. So, and I'm expecting that it's not easy choices. There's no easy solution. South Korean president as a political election campaign can say anything, but actually dumping or moving away from China is very, very difficult for South Korea at this stage. So I expect, and especially we have to worry about North Korea. Now North Korea has a very serious nuclear weapon system in the deposits. So I feel that given the situation, given the situation in the region, I think North Korea is going to push more and more hard towards South Korea. So South Korea will be they are already talking about nuclear war as a first case of retaliation. We're not talking, they say we can use a nuclear weapon as a weapon of retaliation. So this kind of threats, this kind of war mongering will more and more increase, and it can have multiple impact in the region. So I personally feel that so far South Korea or Asia Pacific have managed to avoid the flames of war. But if the war prolongs, it will become very, very difficult for keep this kind of stability, this kind of peace in the region. So when we have time, now we have time, we should start thinking, what should we do now? So how can we maintain peace? How can we persuade China not to push hard? How can we persuade North Korea not to push too much nuclear weapon missiles test in the region? And how can we stop Japan not to go more nationalistic, not to get more and more aggressive? And this kind of situation is not easy. So far, we are not feeling the pressure. But people like me who are studying this issue very seriously and very closely, we are seriously concerned. How long we can maintain peace? How long the situation can remain stable? And how long we can keep our prosperity growth going? So it's going to have a multiple impact. That was the central purpose of today's discussion. And many scholars in Asia Pacific just focusing just focusing on why war happened, but what the wrong Russia is doing on Ukrainian people. So
Right.
of course, this is a human tragedy. Of course, this is a serious situation. We must stop the violence against innocent people, but we have to worry about ourselves also. How can we save our own skin? Because this situation is not, as Professor Petrov said, this is not going to end so soon. Only solution, according to him, is that until Mr. Putin is removed from power, either by death or by political action. But that's not easy. It's best easy said than actually done. So it means actually Professor Petrov is accepting the reality that the war may go long for long, because removing him from power is not practically possible. So he accepting the reality that we are in this situation for a long time. If this war prolongs, Asia will be seriously affected. So our job in Korea, in India, in Pakistan, to make sure that our own political elite, our own political class remain united. Like what happened in Pakistan, but what is going to happen in South Korea, what is happening in India, other countries will happen everywhere. Everywhere will be, elite will be divided. What should we do? Whether should we go Western country, but should we go to China? Because China is very important now. You know, China is not an easy country. When the World War ended, both Russia and China was very undeveloped country. So it was easy to accept. American dominance. But now both Russia and China are very active players in the region. So it's not easy to go back to the USA-led order in the region, because now this region has collapsed. This order has collapsed or going to collapse. Is collapsing now. It's very, very difficult to restore it. So new institutions we have to maintain. We have to build new institutions. We have to build a new mechanism to maintain peace, and we have to format new rules for economic trade, for economic prosperity. You know, US-led order is in the last days. So China and Russia will push very hard to give the last kick to destroy US dominance. But we people are benefiting from US-led order, like Russia, like South Korea, India, Japan, and Singapore. We have benefited, we have prospered because of USA. We cannot afford to lose the US-led order in the region. So how to maintain US-led order in the region? How to maintain now? That is our concern. So, my friends, you have to start taking. So far, so good. We was able to maintain peace. But as the war prolonged, war is coming, or instability is coming to the region. That was my comment. Now I would like to thank my all good friends. Everybody came on my very personal request. I want to thank Professor Petrov and Mr. Jaswal and my friend Professor Dong Chun Chen. He also my good friend, and Professor Mr. Arat Kastanian for giving such a deep insight from that region, you know, because our understanding from that region is very low and very, very thin-skinned tip. So he brought a very new perspective and gave a very balanced, very balanced perspective. So I think he's going to be very constant, regular guest, because we need his insights much more to enrich us, because we have no idea what is happening in the region. So I hope that he will accept our future request also, and he will give us. And last and not least, my friend, this is Mr. Dalveer Singh. He's a professor in Australia. He's also there. I also want to thank him for coming today and giving making his presence felt. And once again, I also want to, Professor Emmanuel, very much thank to you and for giving us such a good leadership today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One moment. Can I have one more question? One last.
Okay. To whom do you want to ask?
Yeah, the last one. Will this crisis lead to increase in weapons sale among countries around the world? And will it lead to more nuclear weapons to secure one's country?
To whom do you want to ask?
It will lead to what?
Lead to more increase in weapons sale among countries and nuclear weapons.
Yes.
May
Well,
I?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's already increasing the military purchases. If you consider previously, before this crisis already, that started after the long war in Syria, everybody in the Arab world started to accumulate military weapons and tech weapons as much as possible, such as Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. They started to heavily also not only purchase from their ally US, and they started to purchase from Russia, S-400 system, and even Saudi Arabia is willing to purchase S-500. And on the other hand, a few months ago, we knew that United Arab Emirates, China is building a military base in United Arab Emirates. So that is the shift that the allies of the allies of United States are shifting trends in the last few years, if we can see. On the other hand, now, as our Korean colleague mentioned, that South Korea also is willing to have a nuclear. Japan is also now raising the question to go for nuclear. And that is the big question now. I mean, Turkey is, Erdogan was openly citing that they are willing to go for nuclear. I mean, here is the main problem now. I mean, the one power is looking to the another and saying, if he does, why shouldn't I have? Why shouldn't I go for having a nuclear or missiles that have nuclear heads? I'm not military expert. I don't know how to call that weapon exactly, but we know that there are some nuclear missiles. They have nuclear, heads, or so that's why I'm saying that this issue now, it's not economy. I don't agree that much that the competition will be economic per se and over resources, because I believe that economic sanctions will not stop any side. Previous to this conflict, Americans put sanctions on Chinese officials or individuals. So does Chinese did the same to the Americans. So that is not policy to stop any superpower. That is childish act. Unfortunately, the US must now understand that he's not the only superpower anymore, and he could not act like George W. Bush era. He cannot be the sheriff of the world. You know, if they do something, they will do the same what they have done. For example, sanction versus sanction. So that will not resolve anything, and that continuous tensions will bring also a conflict like happened in Ukraine. So that's why I believe the best issue now to stop this remilitarization ambitions for other nation states. And I believe lastly that India has the biggest role now to play to bring that new kind of diplomatic international order, because India has good relations with all sides, even though some tensions with China, they are rivals in the region, but at the same time, they are a member together in BRICS. So I believe India should act in this manner to bring the big powers in a round table and solve all these problems until everybody gets remilitarized and become a nuclear nation. Thank you.
Well, thank you everybody for your insights, and I'm very honored to have the chance to moderate such a thoughtful discussion. I guess I would just close with my own comments, echoing the concerns of Dr. Singh, particularly about nuclear war, that it's not so much that nuclear war is going to break out in Ukraine, but that the current combination of the decline and fall of non-proliferation, disarmament policy, the lack of interest in any efforts to control the development or the sales of weapons, and this sort of limitless expansion raises enormously the risks of nuclear war. And we're going to have, I would say, unless there's some profound intellectual and spiritual sort of turnaround in the perspectives of humanity, of, you know, important intellectuals around the world, that we're going to be looking at, you know, dozens and dozens of countries with nuclear weapons in not very far in the future, and that it will exponentially increase the risks for us all. Combined, of course, with the risk of mini nukes, various different tactical nuclear weapons, which have been developed now, starting with the US, but now around the world, which blur the line between a conventional military operation and a nuclear war. It allows you to scale up from a tactical operation in the battlefield up to nuclear war. Anyway, thank you very much, all of you, for participating. And I hope we can have another such event, another such seminar in the very near future to follow up on future developments related to the Ukraine and the unending power politics in Asia. Thank you again.